I remember the first time I sat in front of a grand piano on stage in front of at least 100 people. It was some high school show and our band was playing a Jimi Hendrix song and my hands were shaking. My fingers were like wooden blocks. They were not cooperating. And then my solo came around. I threw my little fingers at the keys and it sounded terrible. I made so many mistakes and it was the most embarrassed I ever felt as a teenager. In truth, I sucked at the piano. I was not good at all. And it's because I didn't understand this one important principle that I wanted to share with you in this video. Once I figured this out, I actually started to get good at the piano and I started to feel confident and comfortable on stage when performing music to other people. So if you feel stuck on the piano and it's kind of like this puzzle that you can't solve, you can't figure out how to sound good on the piano, then this idea might be the one thing that you need to hear that will lead to that breakthrough that you're looking for in your playing. Okay, so the principle itself is actually very simple. It's to think of the piano as a sport that requires physical training. Okay, that might sound crazy to you, but let me explain. Yes, of course, the piano is a musical instrument, okay? So we are talking about music and the arts and creative expression, but in order to achieve that creative expression, you need to develop a degree of technical mastery over the instrument itself, and that is fundamentally a physical thing that requires training. Music flows through us, right? We have all of these emotions and feelings and life experiences and things like this, and we are kind of like this conductor of these things, and it like flows through us, right? That energy wants to flow through your arms and through your hands and through your fingers into the instrument and then out into the world, right? That's kind of the natural flow of music from the body through the instrument and out into the world. And so to achieve this kind of free flow of this energy, of these emotions that you have, and of these things inside that you want to share with music, you need to develop this kind of strength and flexibility and this technical mastery. So I like to think of music and the piano as a two-sided coin, right? Where one side you've got this purely magical and musical, creative, free-flowing expression, right? This side of music is what connects with people. This is your emotions and your life experiences and your magic and your taste and the feelings you have inside, right? The internal substances that you pour into music that makes it feel dang good, right? That kind of, it just makes you move your body, it makes you cry, it brings out certain emotions in you, right? That's the fundamentally human side of music that makes music so powerful, right? So this is a very important side of the coin. I am talking about music and the piano being like a sport here, a physical thing, but I just wanted to clarify that you have to think of music holistically as this kind of two-sided coin where there is this very magical and creative expression side to it, which is very important. But in this video, what I'm talking about is the other side, which is the purely physical side, the technical side, because in order to have that free-flowing creative expression, you need to have that technical side, that physical side mastered to a certain degree. I was about 18 years old when I started composing music on the piano, and there was one piece in particular that I composed that was actually beyond my physical capability. It sounds ridiculous, but I literally composed this piece that was so vigorous. It was such a vigorous movement. In particular, I was like playing octaves on both hands and doing these things with the middle fingers, right? So I was doing these constant octaves in both hands, and my wrists could not cope with that. I literally couldn't even play and perform my own piece of music, my own composition. And there was something very frustrating about that. And so at a certain point, I started to think of the piano more as a sport that requires this kind of physical training, and myself as an athlete, right? So what does an athlete do? An athlete trains his body, right? It's not practice, it's training. So this is the first idea. You want to approach your piano practice like training. And when an athlete is training for some kind of event, right? So it might be the big game or the big match or the race or the fight or whatever. They're training for a particular goal, a particular purpose, okay? So you want to have things that you're working towards on your piano journey. You're working on a piece, you're learning a piece, a particularly challenging piece, or you're working towards a performance, or some recording session, or composing a body of work, right? You want to have things, projects on the line, right? So that your training has a purpose. It has an end goal in mind. You're training for a particular purpose, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that it's training, meaning that you show up to the training, whether you like it or not. An athlete training for some big game where there's like people betting on him, right? He can't miss his training. It's important. He shows up to his training because he needs his body to be in the prime physical condition so that when he shows up to that fight, that boxing match, he's gonna KO, he's gonna knock out the opponent, right? Rather than be knocked out. He doesn't want to be knocked out. That's going to be embarrassing. What is the piano version of that? It's being on stage, like the story I told you at the start of the video, and just not being able to execute what you want to execute on the piano, and you make all of these mistakes and you feel like an idiot. If you show up and practice and do the training, the physical training every day, you're going to get good at the piano. Okay, it's that simple. Now, the third thing is what we're actually training, okay? So the main thing that we're training here is the hands and the fingers, and the ears and the eyes as well, because you need to be able to hear what you're playing and you need to be able to see it visually on the keyboard. If you train the fingers, if you practice finger exercises, if you practice scales on a daily consistent basis, then the notes that you play are going to start sounding good. And music is composed of notes. This is the hack right here. Do your finger exercises and do your scales daily, because you're going to unlock the fingers. That's how I like to describe it, unlocking the fingers. By the way, speaking of unlocking the fingers, I literally have created a 13-hour free course on how to unlock the keyboard and the piano. Okay, so if you want a map on how to do this and how to have this high level of expression on the piano and the keyboard and to establish this very solid foundation with this instrument, I'll leave a link below to my free online community called Unlock the Keyboard. It's literally free. There's an entire 8-module course in there to help you unlock this instrument and reach that next breakthrough on this instrument. Now, it's not just finger exercises and scales that you want to train and practice. It's everything that you play on the piano. Everything that you learn and play on the piano has a technical element to it, right? It has a particular technique, something that you need to do with your hands and fingers, right? Whether that's a shape, you need to form shapes with the hands to play different chords. So if you want to get into jazz and playing more sophisticated chords, you need to learn the shapes of those chords, right? And then if you literally just hold those shapes and then go up the inversions on the piano, right, and form these different shapes to play these different chords, and then you train those shapes, guess what? That's the technical element of playing chords. And so when it comes to playing these kind of sophisticated advanced chords, if you've done the training, your fingers and hands will just form into the shape and you'll just play that dope ass chord. Now, what we're really tapping into here is muscle memory, and you've probably heard of this term before, right? Muscle memory. Your hands and fingers kind of have minds of their own, right? And you need to develop these minds in your hands and fingers. And the reason why you need to do that is so that your hands and fingers can operate on their own. That's what muscle memory is. If you've done enough training on the techniques and on the physical component of whatever you want to play on the piano, then when it comes to performing music or recording music or just playing on a Sunday morning, you can just kind of let your mind go. You don't have to think about where you're placing your fingers and hands. Your hands and fingers are just going to operate because you've developed that muscle memory. It's the equivalent of a basketball player having done so many hoops that when it comes to that really crucial moment in the game, he shoots that hoop and he gets it because he's trained it. He's done the training. It's the same thing on the piano. Now, the key to this approach is to embrace the mundane. You just have to show up and do the practice. And you might be sitting there telling me that you don't like practicing scales because they're boring. I've heard this all the time, and actually I heard it from myself first. I didn't practice finger exercises or scales for like 5 or 6 years after I started learning the piano, and gosh, I wish I did. You know why I didn't practice them? Because they were boring. But when I started to think of my practice as training, myself as an athlete, I was able to just embrace the mundane, boring work. And I just showed up consistently. I just did the practice. Yeah, it's boring, but if you do it, it's going to lead to those like musical revelations. If you embrace the real low, boring moments in your music journey, those high moments are going to be even higher. Right? Because you're gonna have that technical mastery, okay? So I really hope that this idea is helpful to you on your piano journey. If you want to learn about the other elements that are required to become a good pianist, definitely check this video out here, and don't forget to vibe and subscribe, and I'll see you over there. Bye-bye.